All right, we are live on YouTube on July the 4th. Happy July the 4th to everyone in the United States.
Independence Day.
Independence Day. And around the world, I guess.
Yeah.
We all celebrate.
Yeah,
don't we?
from that great movie ID4, which was about 25 years ago.
What is that?
It was Independence Day. It was the
ID4.
Yeah, the alien invasion.
The alien invasion? Yeah, that was a great movie.
Yeah,
Okay.
and they did a riff off of I think it was the fourth or Henry V. The president did. And, yeah.
It was a good movie.
Yeah, it was a great
welcome
movie.
to Through a Therapist's Eyes on our nation's birthday, at least in the United States of America. This is YouTube Live. We come on live every Thursday. John, I appreciate you coming out on a holiday, and Neil as well. We have Victoria's in the mountains having fun, so we let her be on a holiday. So I appreciate you guys coming in and doing another episode of Through a Therapist's Eyes, where you get insights directly to you from a panel of therapists in your home and in your car. This is the YouTube Live. If you're catching us for the first time, we do this on Thursdays, and then you post the show on Spotify, Apple, everywhere you get your podcasts. John gets upset if we don't get 5 stars.
5 stars. Got to have 5 stars.
That's your job, is 5 stars. And tell your friends. We love new subscribers we've been getting on YouTube, all that kind of good stuff. But this is the show introduction. I went into the show introduction when you haven't even gone live, Mike.
Right.
So I'm screwing up.
We're going to do it again.
We're going to do it again.
Yeah.
We're going to do it again. This, though, we are going to be talking about therapy modalities explained. I get a lot of questions and thoughts, and really there's a lot of confusion about the different modalities that therapists use. And so I thought it'd be cool, Mr. You've got a brilliant academic brain.
No, I have an academic brain, but I'm not sure about the brain.
It is brilliant. Just accept the compliment and say thank you.
Thank
because
you.
that's the
Thank
truth.
you very much, my friend. So I'll do my best.
All right. We are ready to go live, Neil, I think.
Yep, ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1.
Hello, this is Through a Therapist's Eyes, coming to you on July the 4th, America's Independence Day. Our birthday is celebrated, and I hope everyone's feeling patriotic, having burgers and hot dogs and hanging out with their friends, and we're getting ready to do some fireworks here in a few hours, John.
That's right.
What about that? Happy 4th to you.
My dogs are going to go nuts.
They are.
Yeah.
My son bought mortars and spiral things,
Yeah.
and I'm sure he couldn't stand it. He let one off the other day, and I wasn't home. His mom told me. I was like, of course he let off a mortar.
Yeah. We live right on the border of Mount Holly. We're in Mount Holly, where Neil and I live in the same subdivision.
Yeah.
But the right next door to where I live is not Mount Holly. It's in the county. And
Okay.
so we have some bozos that shoot off regular firearms. And,
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Regular out of the county
Yeah.
firearms?
Yeah,
just
probably,
shot
Neil,
whenever?
you probably have heard them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So
yeah.
this is July the 4th. Let me see. We have the book is going to be out. I've been saying December the 11th, and I think I'm wrong. I think I saw that it's set for December the 17th. So just before Christmas. And I've got to turn this off and down.
And
what else?
It's got a green-eyed cover.
Yeah,
It's-
it looks good, man.
I think it looks better than the blue ones.
I'm really starting to get excited
Yeah.
about it. Yeah, it's sold a few out of the office. You can't get it till December. Come to the office. We'll get it to you. On marriage, let me see. We have some new YouTube subscribers. I've started to get excited about that to welcome people aboard. Now, Neil, you said, though, we've got like 20. So I guess we're wondering, I want to welcome people. I don't want to leave people out. But explain what you saw.
I think it said our analytics. We've got like 22 subscribers in the last like 28 days.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing, being new kind of the analytics side, it looks like they only notify us on a handful. So I'm guessing there's probably some setting in there that says, hey, it's okay to notify them that you've joined in. But yeah, there's limited statistics. We got 143 subscribers plus 22 in the last 28 days.
So if you didn't get a greeting, that's probably why. But Ko Yi, welcome to the YouTube group, right?
Yay.
You got to give a clap, John. And Tal Rosette, welcome to the YouTube group.
Fantastic.
I love that. So
Love to
that's
have
kinda
you on
cool.
board. Yeah.
Grow and tell your friends. Help us out. That's your job. Click subscribe to us. That all helps us. It really is important. Contact it through therapisteyes.com is the way you can email with us. We respond to things. I respond pretty readily, which we've been getting a lot on the short. So that's been fun to hear people's thoughts, hear people's questions. So keep it up. We really do. This is the human emotional experience, which we endeavor to figure out together, and that's one of the ways that you interact with us. We can do that. So
You say that with such aplomb.
a plum, such a plum.
Yes,
But-
with such ease.
Such a plum. Is that a compliment or
Yeah.
a criticism? A plum. I guess you like plums.
I like plums.
Okay. Well, then I
But
like.
but that's not the origin of it.
I like to be a plum.
Yes.
Get it? Anyway.
Got it.
sorry.
Yeah, you're plum.
Modalities, therapy modalities.
Better than being a
explained.
prune.
This
a
is
prune.
episode 278. You're killing me.
Okay.
Do you know what type of therapy your therapist practices? Does it matter what type of therapy a therapist uses? And should I pick a therapist by looking for a certain type of therapy? I think these are pretty cool questions, and I've gotten with Craig when he was the co-host, he was like, "What is cognitive behavioral therapy?" Anyway, I'm like, we need to do a show on that because people don't really know. There's such mystery, John, about what it is that we do. And I find that clinicians ourselves get hooked up with this issue on, well, what modality do you use? And
Well, and
you
that's an emphasis that we have in academia, at least with
Right.
the programs, because you want the counselors in training or therapists in training to actually have a theoretical basis. It doesn't really matter what they're doing as long as it's consistent. And from there, if they want to move on to a different one, they are more than free to do it. What fits their
Why?
person. Why? Because
Why?
it's a discipline. It's
Okay.
in other words, it's knowledge. They can drill down and do this. I think, and my recommendation is that for a young therapist, and by that I mean you could be like 40 or 50 before
and
you go
new
into
to the profession.
new
yeah.
to the profession, is that you follow that pretty consistently for the first several years, then start to bring in and integrate other theories into your practice.
I love that you make that suggestion, honestly, because I somewhere in here, the first section, eclectic versus a specific type. I've often, I'm going to confess, I've often been kind of haunted by Dr. Neil Newfield. If you're listening out there, man, I love you. He was my favorite college professor. I learned the most from him. His class was the hardest, but he was absolutely awesome. But I flat out disagreed with him with when he makes the strong notion that you need to pick a modality, stick with that modality, and become the top 5% in that modality before maybe you go on and change and whatnot. And I didn't like that because I like to pull so many different things into what I'm doing and having been trained. And you're kind of watering that down a little bit by saying, hey, choose one and stay with it specifically for, a few years.
And that you know it, that
Yeah,
it becomes
yeah.
a part of you. And if it's not a good fit, you certainly can move into another modality.
Yeah.
And for example, I've never been a great fan of CBT. For example.
Really?
Yeah, no.
Cognitive behavioral therapy.
I'm more.
Really? I'm shocked at that.
I'm more-
Usually we're like lockstep, brother. What happened?
Well-
I love CBT.
I think it's been distorted a lot in terms of manualization, and so
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So
Well, I don't use manuals. I don't
Okay.
even use my handouts anymore. I don't.
but there's nothing wrong with CBT. I mean, I love Aaron Beck, and
So maybe the application.
the application,
The way people
yeah, the
go about
rigidity
it,
of
the
it.
rigidity of it.
Okay, so in other words, the client, it seems to take a back seat to the fact that it's manualized. But I have
Yeah.
strong feelings about that sort of thing.
You do. You have
Yeah.
a pastor's heart.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now,
you're
I like.
you're super client centered, aren't you?
I'm existential.
Okay.
Or I like REBT, as well because I think it takes it a step further than CBT.
Okay. We're probably losing people. A little bit. I think we need
REBT.
to- RESPT. Anyway.
You did it. You
I
sang.
did,
You
I
sang.
did.
Congratulations.
Thank you, John. You've got me doing that every
That's
now and again.
rational. REBT is a rational emotive behavioral therapy.
So I want to get into like breaking things down a
Okay.
little bit more so listeners can kind of get an idea of, what therapists are faced with. And I think honestly we have to be careful, John, because I could get into the geeky world of academia and talk all the talk with the buzzwords and the different modalities and what they are. And we're going to do that a little bit today. But I want to broaden the stroke a little bit so that people can demystify the modalities. That would have been a good title for the show, Demystify Therapy Modalities, because it seems so mysterious, so weird, so uncomfortable, and therefore I feel like people probably avoid therapy services to a certain extent anyway, because I don't want you and your academic therapy modality to be in my head, man. They feel weird, because it is a little weird if you think about the behind the scenes and the structuredness of research and efficacy.
Well,
and all that.
and I think one of the things, and I think you and I are both, there's a part of me that's also data driven, and so the CBT is very appealing, REBT, because there's a lot of empirical data that would say it's evidence based, and you can replicate it. These are tried and true.
Let's do it. Let's do a quick little game. I thought we would do this, and I've debated back in my head in the
Oh,
last
no.
5 minutes. Yeah, I know.
What fresh hell is this?
Let's do a game, John.
Okay.
And what we're gonna try maybe is to see. You're gonna smoke me, I think.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, probably so. You name a modality, I'll name another modality. Neil, make sure that we don't repeat one, and see how many we could just kind of come up with. I don't. You've looked at the sheet. We've got some listed, but you willing to play for a moment?
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
Go, you name one.
Solution focused therapy.
Solution focus. Okay, I will.
That's
go,
in the CBT family.
I'll go motivational interviewing.
Oh, excellent. Gestalt therapy.
Gestalt is an awesome one. Psychodynamic
Yeah.
theory.
Yeah, I'm with psychoanalytic.
Psycho. Is it the same thing? Different?
Yeah.
Psychoanalytic and psychodynamic.
Dynamic is different because
It is two
it's
different
shorter.
ones.
Psychodynamic is a lot shorter than
Okay.
psycho.
Adlerian psychotherapy.
Jungian.
Jungian. Love
Yeah.
that. I'll take the REBT because I forgot that one that you reminded me a little bit ago.
Yeah, REBT is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got another one?
Gestalt.
You said
Not
Gestalt.
Gestalt. I'm sorry. A reality.
Reality. All right. How about narrative therapy?
Oh, I love narrative
I do too.
therapy. There's another one. Did I say? I did say reality, right?
Yes.
Transactional analysis.
Transactional analysis.
Oh, that
That's
was when
good.
I was a kid. That was like the bomb.
All right.
Okay.
Family systems theory.
Bohemian.
Bohemian. How about emotion-focused therapy? I talk about that on the show a lot.
Yeah. Dialectical behavioral therapy.
Oh, DBT.
And see, that's in the CBT,
Start the
REBT.
Struggle.
Yeah.
ACT. That's a new one. What does that
Yeah.
stand for? I got to look at my
Acceptance.
notes. Acceptance and what is ACT? And commitment therapy. That's right.
And that's in the CBT family
Okay.
as
Well,
well.
there's a lot
But
of
that's a
CBT.
little
It's a
family.
header.
And,
You got
yeah.
another one?
Okay. Hope you can do this.
I think we're both
Feminist
Feminist therapy?
Yes.
Oh, come on.
There's a whole chapter.
Never
in
even
Corey.
heard of it.
It's empowerment. So all the
Oh,
stuff.
I have one.
Okay.
Art therapy,
Art therapy, play therapy,
music therapy.
music therapy. Okay, you got me.
Oh, we start to go. I'm fading
I think
as
we're
well.
running out of it. But no, there's more.
There are more drum
Yeah.
therapies. There's a lot
Yes,
of the arts. and stuff.
Adlerian therapy.
I said that one.
You did say that,
did.
didn't you?
The point is, this is fun. We'll call it a tie because I'm starting to struggle as well. The thing is it's so, you see what I mean? Like, we just rattled off, 10, 15
Yeah.
different, what is bohemian therapy? Is it a rhapsody? Like, what do people, how can we take, you like that, didn't you?
Yeah.
How can we take the mystery out of therapy modalities for people.
Yeah.
Right? Let's think.
Yeah, and it's overwhelming. And all these therapies are just ways of helping people be able to get a handle on what's going on inside of them, so that they can actually find a way out of some of their conflicts or their anxiety and depression.
I need things dumbed down for me and simplified. I agree. I mean,
Yeah,
I
that's
think
TA is basically psychoanalytic therapy.
yeah.
Yeah, and
I mean, it's fun for therapists to kick around and to study and to look at and research, and we get grounded into a modality. But really, when it comes down to it, it's relational problems, internal problems, different insecurities and feelings and emotions that all swirl around that you're trying to kind of manage in your internal self and in your relationship to
Mindfulness
others.
therapy.
Ah, you got it.
Okay.
We'll give you the win. Mindfulness,
No,
of course. There are others still. There are many others still. But the thing is just to simplify this, it really is just managing your crap, figuring out how to manage your emotional junk.
Yeah.
I mean, does that sound too?
That's
simple?
right. Well, there's another thing I'm going to kick around is that first thing I learned was in my doctoral program is that 60% of what a person does, a therapist does, and a counselor does, is that the person's going to get better. But the idea is that you want to raise that 60% to 70 or 80 or 90%. 95% effective and be a catalyst for change, a positive change in a person's life,
and be able to document that. With data that suggests you're physically, emotionally
because
doing better.
Most of the stuff, like with the psychoanalysis with Freud, is that it just came up in his head. It was basically.
That's a perfect transition, John. Let me jump in because we have an awesome YouTube question from Cass. Hey, Cass.
Hey, Cass.
Nice shout out to Cass. It's an awesome question. I should have had it in my lineup, and I didn't, and it fits in the show right now. She says, "Who invents these therapies?" ? It's an awesome question.
Sigmund Freud.
Freud. Sigmund Freud is his name, man.
Well,
he's not a fraud.
No, he's not.
Who creates these, John?
Well, very creative people.
Right.
People that are very behavioral therapy.
That's another therapy, yeah.
B.F. Skinner. So, I mean, it's one of these, the people have this idea, they get an idea in their mind as to what would be effective. Sometimes the therapist himself or that person that comes up with the theory is a troubled individual themselves, and they're able to make sense out of life. For example, Albert Ellis.
Okay. Father of what?
Father of REBT, Rational Emotive Behavioral Therapy.
Okay.
And so he wanted to go out with girls, and he was very shy, and he said, I can't do this. And he was going down the campus one day, and EMDR is another one. Okay.
You definitely won, man.
Okay. No. And so what he does is he says, I want to go out with this girl. And so he goes through a process where he disputes his irrational thoughts. And then he asks a girl out, and she turns him down. He then says, I'm going to ask another girl out. And
goes through his process.
Goes through a process, and he started seeing A, B, C, D, and E. And he was able to go through those steps. And
I mean, to answer your question, Cass, I think that it kind of goes all the way back. Where would you say, John? Like, we'll call them ancient, I guess, but very early day philosophers and such, right?
Socrates. Good example.
Socrates, they said in the movie.
Socrates.
Yes. Socrates was a philosopher.
Right.
And human beings have been aware since ages of time ago that we have emotions and we have a quest for happiness and we have these these common human. I mean, it's what makes us human. And simply to answer the question, who creates these therapies? People that think about them and write them down and put a name on a particular therapy modality. Then all the academic people come in and study this and create efficacy from data points and stuff. But basically, people just think about their emotions or what they see and how things
or
work.
why they do things impulsively or why compulsively.
Yeah, what goes into this? What is, Freud thought a lot about subconsciousness and did some research to kind of, study people. It's basically, can we say that a therapy modality, a specific therapy modality, is the result from studying people?
Right.
I think that's
Definitely.
I just created that in my head.
Well,
right?
and that was during a time in which there was called histrionics, and so they would say that, and that's from the uterus, the Greek word, and so that they would assign women back in a very
Dark Ages. Almost.
Dark Ages, yeah. Because the idea was Aristotle thought that the uterus traveled when somebody was unbalanced.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. So Freud.
This is why I was really excited to do this show with you, John.
So Freud actually kind of gave a little bit of a scientific explanation, and he talked about why we have dreams and that sort of, and what's going on and what kind of work we do. And so he said this is the subconscious that is like a roiling cauldron that comes up and goes to the top, but most of the stuff and our bad stuff is down below, and it's deterministic. And that worked for a while until the mid 30s, 40s, and then other people came on and added to it and said, Adler said this is a social thing. It's not just an individualistic or deterministic, it's dynamic.
Yeah.
And so Alfred Adler, who was another Austrian, kind of did the social idea. And so if you have an inferiority complex, you can blame Alfred Adler for that. So
because it got labeled. Let me turn to you, Neil. Grab your mic and all, because I want to ask a non-clinician this question, because we can get all academic, John, like I said, and we can do that, but I think we got to be careful. I'm curious from a non-clinician's perspective, Neil. Do you think the public around the world, people just around the world, get mystified by this kind of stuff, or are really curious about emotions and feelings and the pursuit of happiness and the things that philosophers would think about? Do we get mystified by it, or do you think people are really curious about it?
Well, it obviously depends on the purpose.
Yeah.
The person,
yeah.
The person, because, every person's different. Their personality is different. And I think there's a lot of people that are there's the curious nature that wants to do it. I think overall it's I don't know. I think as a breakdown, I think most people always ask why. When you deal with interactions, I think there's always that curiosity, because
occurred to me.
Why does my spouse do this? Why do my kids do that? Why is my friend why do I do that? They ask those questions why. Now, do they take that step to really try to figure it out? I'm not sure, but I think by nature, everyone's curious about why, unless you have kind of a psychopathic kind of you just don't care about other people. I think everyone, majority would be curious.
People are mystified by the science of therapy, but they don't realize they're very curious about why and what I do and what my partner or people do. And that's actually what therapy modalities are thinking about. There's a disconnect.
Yeah, but I think the biggest thing when you look at your little game you played, I don't think people understand the complexities and the uniqueness of a lot of the stuff that goes into it.
Perfect transition.
And I think that's, to me, because I've thought about well, why would you go to a therapist? I said, because they study everything, and then I'm just going to chime in. I think staying with the modality until you get good at it, I think is better than trying to jump around too soon.
All right, Dr. Neil Newfield.
Well, and the reason why I say that is from an IT background, if you learn a software and you know what's going on, you become the expert in it, so you can move to the next. I think
it's speaking a language.
It's very important to understand that. I don't think you have to stick to it, but I think you have to build a base so you can be efficient in it and help them. But I think the fact that you now have other tools, once you get efficient in one, you can go to the next modality, and then you figure out how to incorporate that to learn. But I think that's the thing people just don't understand. When you go to a therapist, those modalities are so important. That's because I've talked to my wife about with this. Like,
Yeah.
that's why you go, because now you guys have learned so much in all these different ways. So when one modality is not working with a patient, you might switch it up if you have experience with it to better serve them.
Right.
And I think that's really cool. I think that's where people don't understand. And I think that's where people get kind of overwhelmed by, like, well, I go to a therapist, they're just going to talk to me. Yeah, but you don't understand what they've done and what the tools they're going to bring to you when you talk to them.
And that's a good transition to talking about some of these specific things. But I'm listening to you, Neil, and yeah, I mean, I hear all the time, John, people talk about, well, it's why I take an active, I'm much more active in my sessions back and forth with people, because I will hear a lot, just like you were saying, Neil, they don't get therapy because they just sit there and they listen to me, and I don't think they're doing anything.
They're not working.
Right. But what you got to understand is that might be really like psychodynamic or those types of modality, Gestalt. I studied Gestalt therapy, but it's a very here and now and in the moment kind of a mindfulness practice that I don't use because I think I would freak people out. If I just said, "Hey, put attention to your legs and see what energy's there,"
Well,
or
you can
people just get lost.
Well, and yeah, I think from my own experiences that I use a Gestalt techniques with somebody I've worked with for a while.
Yeah,
because it has to
empty
be
chair and
empty chair and trust, and also a lot of dream work in terms of Gestalt.
Oh, you do dream work?
I do dream work
okay.
with Gestalt, because you see yourself in who are the characters in your dream, for example, and you actually represent all those people or even animals in the dream that you might have. And so, there's a lion in the dream, there is another person. And so you might actually see, or someone who is being villainous, so to speak.
Dream analysis is another form of therapy, actually.
Yeah, it is. It is, and that's Freud started that.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
Well,
He'd
actually,
call
the
that part of
Greeks did that.
Did they?
Yeah, they did.
People usually steal
Yeah.
stuff from other people.
Yeah, well, the Greeks were pretty smart. They had the oracles at Delphi, and it was always something that was kind of nebulous, but they had some very wise people there that would interpret, and they would interpret the dreams. So
at risk of scaring people or boring people or whatever, I want to go through some of these modalities.
I'm so excited about this. I'm not bored. So
I'm not thinking of you and I'm thinking of the listening public.
I'm geeking out.
What is, I know, right?
Yeah.
What is humanistic therapy? What is ACT therapy? What is EMDR? I want to go down to explain some of the bigger ones so that people can have an understanding and ask intelligent questions. As you say, Neil, if you're going to go see a therapist, it's a good question to ask. What do you use? What type of therapy primarily do you engage in?
I want to put a disclaimer that says the non-clinician. Look at this as tools in your therapist arsenal to better help you, and they're not trying to, because some people might look at this as ways to manipulate them, or it's like these things are there to really help to understand, because everyone's different. So I just want to put a disclaimer before we start going into this. Think about what we're going to be talking about and think about, okay, can this have I seen these behaviors with my therapist? Why are they doing it? What's going on? And think of it as a positive,
Bingo.
not a negative.
I'm sorry. But that's why you do a thorough assessment.
Right.
Because
go there, yeah.
Well, the reason why is because you need to know as much about your client as possible from the get-go, so that you get an idea what the client is needing and what he or she is. Do they think in terms of analogies? I do that a lot. So metaphors and that sort of thing. But if you're somebody that's kind of like concrete.
Asperger's folks aren't going to work well with that.
No, they're not, because it's alien. It's a language that's just not there for them.
Right. Yeah, that's a super important point. I'm glad that came out, because you really do. I look a lot at that first contact, that first session is such an important time, because I'm trying to get rapport and trust and those crucial things that I think are probably above any modality. Those are the most important things. Get rapport, get trust built. Understand
The
that I can help
therapeutic
you.
relationship is key.
Therapeutic relationship is crucial. But then I'm getting a lot of data about how you work, what your tendencies are, what your emotions are. I'm thinking about diagnosis. Therapists, listen to this. I am assessing substance use issues. And that's a big hole. I love picking on that because there's such a great divide between mental health therapy and substance abuse therapy, and we need to block
That's
that.
so bogus. No offense
yes.
to people that are pure substance use folks.
Yeah.
You've got to have it's
Both.
both. It's both. It's
gotta have
not
both.
either or. It's both and.
Right. So I'm looking at what direction do we want to head in, and I take in count your goals. Like, we always ask, it's on the initial paperwork, like, what do you want to get out of this? How, and I'm thinking framing things up. I mean, if they're family dynamics, I'm going family systems theory. If your thinking errors are really twisted in anxiety, I'm probably going to go CBT direction. If I'm thinking about, the stress that you feel and the poor self-esteem, I'm going to look maybe at mindfulness stuff and stress management, stress tolerance increase. There really is that first session that drives where and how, and then to your point, Neil, why we do what we do.
Well, for example, when you're doing like with folks with mindfulness, there's an insight-drivenness aspect to it, but there's a lot of behavioral therapy that's involved.
Absolutely.
So there's an integrative aspect in that modality itself. I think people that are a little more adept at that.
And younger therapists, you'll get used to like pulling these different things in. It's kind of like it begins to be second nature. You begin to kind of shift, and as you connect better with your client.
I think too, Chris, is that you need to know what speaks to you as a therapist.
Fair enough. Excellent point. Go with that.
Well, I think that's why your friend, your Dr. Newfield, was so wise, and I could have studied under his at his feet as well. So the idea is that you undergo a process of self-discovery when you are in school for 2.5 to 3 years to become a therapist.
You do a lot of work.
We require, when I was at Montreat and I was at my former place, and I guess that means at the University of Louisiana at Monroe, I required our students to go through therapy themselves.
Yeah, I've heard some programs do that. Social work doesn't do that a lot.
Yeah, and because if you don't know thyself,
right?
Who said that? Socrates.
Socrates did? Okay.
Yeah. Know thyself. If you don't know yourself, how can you possibly be able to, if you don't know who you are, how can you possibly help someone know who they are?
Right.
And so.
Right. You got to, I love Casey's statement. The best therapists have therapists, and I think that really ends up being pretty true. But just to finish that point with the substance abuse versus mental health, I think that it's really gotten better. I heard Claudia Black, a traditional family therapist in substance abuse, expounds upon how she has found in the last 10 years doing a whole lot more mental health therapy. And I haven't heard a lot of mental health folks switch into the substance abuse and getting that training, but I'm pretty dogmatic on that. You've got to get treatment training in both realms. You can't do one
if
or
a
the other.
person doesn't have insight, then how is that going to last?
Right.
That's my question. And I think that's one of my bones I had to pick with CBT initially, or behavioral, is that it's not necessarily insight driven. I think you could become very insightful as a result of behavioral therapy.
Yes.
CBT. But generally speaking, it's not emphasized to the extent. And that's why one would call depth psychology would be, or depth ideas. So people can.
I don't understand depth psychology. What is
well, depth psychology was in existential terms.
Okay,
is to be
you're
able
just talking
to
about going to
going to the
emotional
deep
realm,
emotion.
yeah.
What are your motivations?
Yeah, behavior.
This is what Neil was talking about in my mind. I was interpreting it. Is that people want to know why?
Yeah.
Why? And what motivated them? What's their motivation? Acting.
Yeah.
Yes. So,
Acting things out.
Yeah.
And playing through. Okay. So let's go to some of these specifics. Let's go down through some of these. I mean, I think the big one is CBT. People are very much wanting to know what
there's nothing
cognitive
wrong with it.
behavioral therapy is. I thought we did an episode on it, but actually, I never did find it. I swear we did a CBT episode, but thoughts, feelings, behavioral connections, you're really delving
Actions.
into, how you think, how you behave.
Dispute stinking thinking.
Yeah, stinking thinking is a substance abuse term.
Yeah.
A lot of cognitive behavioral stuff is in substance abuse treatment. And then you really activate your behavior and try to move your behavior in a different way or move your thoughts in a different way, that there's an interplay between those two. So you're using either of the two to really affect change.
Right.
That a pretty decent summary?
That's a good, perfect.
Okay.
And by doing so, your thinking changes. Therefore, you start to see things from a different perspective.
This next one bugs me a little bit.
Okay.
I'm a little bugged out about dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT. How can I convey why I'm bugged out a little bit? You know what? I think it's your term with the CBT. Do you find that people with DBT practice get pretty rigid also?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that I never thought of it, but I'm thinking that in a moment. I think that's what bugs me is the rigidity with a DBT practice. Is that
It's and I don't want to use it. It's a religious in a sense, not a religion in terms of a higher power or anything like that, but there's a system of following that, and I think that may be part of the rigidity to it.
Yeah, like don't box me in kind of thing. You know, but it is a very effective thing. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I love all of the modules and the lists of skills. I mean, it's probably the easiest and best way, particularly for a younger therapist, I would think, to say like, well, what are the skills that I'm trying to teach? You literally have them taught in the book. It's like module 1, module 2, module 3, and 4, and you go through these meetings.
Cognitive processing therapy is another one.
Right.
So
you're slaughtering me with our game
No.
that you keep. But let's stay with DBT for just a second.
Yeah.
So this is developed by a lady named Marsha Lonahan. I had some colleagues in the past that were very into it, and that's always stuck with me. You really go through 4 modules. What were the modules? Mindfulness. Here it is. Yeah, mindfulness, distress tolerance, emotion regulation, and interpersonal effectiveness. And actually, they're very much like it. The DBT clinician is probably like the king or queen of mindfulness. It's like when you go through groups, because they do a lot of DBT in groups, and oftentimes this is really designed for borderline personality disorder. That we also need to say you'll do a module of mindfulness, and then you'll go to a module of conflict resolution. Then you'll come back to the module 1 with mindfulness and do the interpersonal effectiveness, and then you'll come back to mindfulness. You see, so they really center around mindfulness, like be in the moment, experience what you're experiencing.
Because a person who feels empty,
borderline
in oneself, doesn't know who oneself is, that kind of enables that person to develop a personality.
Yeah.
A sense of self.
Well, a process of what do I do to get to a place of understanding myself.
And self-soothing and that sort of thing.
Right.
Okay, here's why I mentioned cognitive processing therapy is also a branch of CBT or REBT, and basically it's used for people with PTSD.
Okay.
And so you have folks that basically and they go through a lot of similar things like DBT in terms of some of the processes that go on that.
Okay.
So
let's go on to one of the dynamic ones, the old school thinking, the psychodynamic and Adlerian therapy. How would you kind of summarize that, John?
Well, I think I did the psychodynamic is sort of is Freud on steroids. Basically, it's very fast, relatively speaking, because psychoanalysis used to be a couple of times, 3 times a week, for an hour for years.
Yeah, the old school of a therapist actually had the title of an analyst.
Right.
I've heard people early in my career say, "Well, I had an analyst," and I was like, "What?" It's another name for a therapist doing psychodynamic practice. Yeah.
And so this kind of speeds it up, and part of it, psychodynamics lends itself to group therapy. So that is interesting.
Does it?
Yeah. You can do it individually. You can do it individually,
I think you don't more commonly do it individually. I've never thought of. I love psychodynamic stuff. Honestly, I've never thought of doing a psychodynamic group. Really,
you have a psychodynamic group, and you can.
Really?
The process. That's what we got at cemetery when I did my clinical seminary.
Seminary.
I did
did it at the cemetery.
I did clinical pastoral education, and we did psychodynamic groups.
And, wow, that sounds like fun.
When you dig deep.
Do you?
You dig deep. And that's depth psychology. And so you can do that, and you do it fairly quickly. You do it over 16 to 20 or 24 sessions, and it's a lot of fun.
That's cool. Okay, it's fun.
Okay, yeah.
All right, let's move on to humanistic therapy.
Well, what was the other one that you said? Psychodynamic versus
Adlerian.
Yeah. Adlerian's great, isn't it?
Oh, I love Adlerian stuff.
Yeah,
remember I was all excited about that when I came back from the Adlerian conference for 3 days and just got immersed in all that stuff again. And it took a little while.
You got converted.
It was a nice reminder, honestly. I wouldn't say converted. I got reattached.
Yeah,
because that stuff early on was pretty cool.
Yeah. Birth order. It's a big thing, and
memories,
spit in one soup, as if thinking, and so they got little techniques that they follow.
Specific techniques.
Think as if,
right?
Yeah. So I find that kind of a dynamic process
and insightful oriented.
Insight oriented. Dream work is also important to it as well.
Yeah,
and
which is interesting. I've never really done dream work. I don't like it because. To me, I've always kind of said when it comes to that, people will ask me about dreams.
Dream.
There you go. If you're listening to us for the first time, John oftentimes breaks out on song. I love it. But I think it's so left up to abstract interpretation. So when people ask me about dreams, I'll do a little bit of that. But instead, what I really like to think about, and I will always ask the question when somebody's talking about dreams, how did you feel in the dream? Because to me, that's not really needing interpretation and is the main point.
Yeah, and the thing is that the client or the patient's the one that does the interpretation ultimately.
Ultimately, but I find people struggle with that. I mean, I dreamt that a pig was in my dream and I bloodlet him, and I don't know what that means. Well, pigs can represent richness, or they can represent.
Okay, I'll buy that.
Or they can represent, dirtiness. So it's. I don't know that people. I guess what I'm saying is I don't like to rely on people to interpret their metaphoric understanding of that dream. I find that I get lost when I try to do that with people, John.
Yeah.
Does that sound crazy?
No, it doesn't. You drive me crazy.
So I just sidestep it and go with how you feel, and that tells me a lot because that's.
Well, how do you feel right now about it? So I had when I was at seminary, I had all these dreams about tornadoes coming.
Right.
And there were 7 tornadoes coming, bearing down. Well, I knew what that meant. I was getting ready to graduate, and I was engaged.
Right.
And she didn't like me very much. And
life's about to go crazy.
Life's a bitch, Yeah.
Right.
So it didn't take a lot of interpretation.
Exactly. And that's where I find, that now I will say too, reoccurring dreams are kind of interesting because, you have, I found that with somebody kind of recently. It's like, oh, this reoccurring thing is like, what's going on with that? And I dialed into that and we found a big deal. Yeah.
Had dread with the tornadoes coming in.
Dread,
I had 7 UFOs, and guess what was on at that time when I was at seminary? Close Encounters of a Third Kind.
Oh wow, yeah, and
Yeah.
your brain just takes
Just
that,
takes
and molds
that
it
and
into.
goes with that.
Mhm.
And so someone suggested, the therapist suggested that, all right, instead of waking up, you determine you're not going to wake up. You are going to go through it.
When
and
you've done
encounter-
therapy, John, do you sit there and like, oh, you're operating from that modality or this? Therapists in therapy can be tough.
Yeah, I do.
Do you? Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of do too. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like
I evaluate. Yeah.
it's terrible.
Yeah.
It's terrible. All right, let's move on a little bit with. It was on the list. I don't think I use. Well, I use humanistic therapy all the time and its effectiveness. And its core piece. What would you say about humanistic therapy? That's another bigger one that is out there.
Well, and again, that is one that has a very positive view of humanity, I think, as opposed to psychoanalysis or not mechanistic, and so it'd be different than CBT and all those other modalities we talk about. And humanistic would be like person-centered.
Right.
It would existential. It would be Gestalt even.
Gestalty, yeah.
Gestalty, and that
Empathy
is
and
empathy,
reflecting things.
wholeness, and unconditional positive regard. The
Comes
core
from humanistic.
yeah, the core conditions that was very, very important with Rogers.
Mhm.
And he started and developed, Rogerian started, which is client-centered or person-centered, saying the client or the patient is the expert. And so that there's that that we get to be as the accompany the client or the patient in their journey. And so it's a lot of times it's non-directive. And the problem with that is that insurance companies don't like that. They want you.
No, they don't. We're not even touching the insurance practices.
And they don't and they don't like diagnosis, and they don't like to put down. And I've known some people with marriage and family therapy backgrounds. Oh, we don't do diagnosis.
Yeah, I've heard that.
But you got to
You
have
got
that.
to.
Yeah.
And it's a part of our science, you know.
And I think that's
It's part of our science. So, all right, my social work brand, I got to claim, we got family systems theory, man.
Yeah.
That is a kind of a modality where you're looking at interaction patterns. You're looking at strategically operating with challenges or changes with behavior and interaction. You're looking at structurally how the family
Do you
works.
do like Minution and those guys, or that do the genograms and
I do a genogram on every person I meet, so I
Yeah.
guess the answer is yes. So yes, but I didn't know it.
Yeah.
I haven't thought about that, so I must have pulled that.
Well,
somewhere.
and it was just in terms of, well, yeah, I think that's true. I think they're very true. And you like to see how the families interact, and you need to know the family history. You
Right.
need the story.
Intergenerational trauma and
yeah.
things like that.
Yeah, it's kind of biblical too, and it's
All right, how about ACT therapy? This is a new one,
Yeah.
and it's quite the rave. Did you know that?
yeah. I know
Oh,
the
yeah.
other rave too.
People love acceptance and commitment therapy. Well, I'm boning up on this a little bit. What do you know about
I know very little about it.
Okay.
Okay, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm boning up on it, and I'm going to start because I like it. I think acceptance and commitment therapy, really a lot of mindfulness and behavioral strategies. They have 6 core processes: acceptance, cognitive diffusion, being present, self as context, values, and committed action. So I think the thing that I've kind of taken a lot of CBT and other things.
It's
and
in that
moved
family.
into.
Yeah.
I didn't know it, but that's my natural fit with being very active. And how can we change things? What kind of things can we commit to? What types of things? So you're talking about this in session. This next week you're going to try to do this or
incorporating
that.
motivation,
Right.
intentionality.
Actually, a lot of metaphors as well.
Metaphors, yeah. So
Visualizing.
so in a way, it's not eclectic. It's more integrative. in terms of a family system.
Yeah. I've started to dive into acceptance ACT a little bit, and I'm very consistent with it, but didn't know it. Right. So that's kind of interesting.
You didn't know you're. Yeah, it's like having a religion and not knowing that you're actually a Presbyterian or something.
I'm finding that with ACT the more I dive into it. Oh boy, John. So EMDR.
Okay.
Eye movement desensitization. What's the R?
Oh,
Come on. What's EMDR? Eye movement desensitization and not repetition.
no.
Ah.
We're good. You're gonna have to.
Yeah,
Neil, help us out.
Hey Siri, what does EMDR stand for? Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing.
Reprocessing.
Yeah, reprocessing.
Okay. All right. What do I think about it?
Yeah.
I think the fact
we've talked about this before.
I think it's changing stinking thinking, but I don't think there's anything magic about having your finger waved and going back and forth or tapping or that sort of thing. That
Stinking thinking is a substance abuse term.
Yes. I think it is taking, I think it's redirection. I think basically what happens is if you can reframe it, and then you're able to lay down a long-term memory from, let's say, PTSD. And so a lot of people said it's a cure. You could do it in one session for PTSD. The problem is with PTSD is that there's multiple PTSD sessions that encumber themselves like the layers of an onion. It has to be.
Well, you and I work with trauma, I think, a lot, and I think that's what bothers me with this particular one is when people get locked in. Again, back to that idea,
Well, it makes some people very rich that take it's a very expensive training for the therapist.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah. But
I went
to
to
me,
the trainings, I was not going to pay for the certification. I'm like, look,
it seems to me that here it's like Reiki. It's like putting your hands over a body, and that person's going to change. Well, there is going to be a positive reaction to this because you have somebody taking time and paying attention to you for healing. Okay,
right.
I think EMDR does something very similar, and I know I'm being controversial, and people are going to be upset with me.
I know, but it's true, and it's one of the things I've said before. I mean, a lot of times when you're doing EMDR, which is making eye movement using bilateral movements, you can do tapping on right leg, left legs, changing up the symmetry so it's not like a rhythm. It's got
just
different patterns.
Learn how to play the drums.
Yeah, well,
okay,
yeah,
I'm
absolutely. But the thing is it doesn't, like, you don't need to lock in by saying I have trauma, I want an EMDR therapist, and that's all I want to work with. Because there are many ways.
They will do that because we want to do it very quickly, and and that's people. That's our human nature,
right?
And we want to have a quick fix.
Tell me I could do 3 sessions and be fixed. Yes, that's great. Sign me up. I'll spend $1,500. Yeah, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat, and trauma work can be very in depth. And so it doesn't need to be a one specific,
This is why ACT, though, is good because it is commitment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Acceptance also.
Acceptance. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I like ACT.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should look into it a little bit,
Get
John.
our ACT together.
It's a cool thing. All right, moving on a little bit. I don't want to, and then we'll sum it all together. But mindfulness therapy, we kind of talked a lot about mindfulness. That's a big rave nowadays, mindfulness activities, mindfulness practice, meditative kind of stuff. I think people are really catching on to that, and you can have some powerful experiences with that. What do you experience with art therapy? Have you done much with art, drums, drawing, art therapy?
I have clients that I work more in terms of psychodynamic with that also do drum therapy, and that is music.
Drum therapy is wonderful, yeah.
And music therapy.
That's like a drum circle where you're all playing.
And they're in doing that.
Creating a group feel together. Yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah, and I think there's often there is a religious aspect to it, and I don't mean that in
spiritual. You mean maybe
spiritual
connectedness?
Yeah. Well, but ritual. So
okay.
it's in terms of of that. So spiritual, of course, is kind of amorphous, but this is the ritualistic aspect of it. You can be very spiritual and be religious at the same time.
Okay.
Okay.
Um,
But I like that. Art therapy is great.
I was going to tell a whole story. I'm going to give it a super brief because just to give you an idea, therapists listening, I met with an art therapist and learned from him a little bit. It was really cool. They took a schizophrenic patient and did art therapy with them. And I just feel like that doesn't match.
Mm-hmm.
But it really did. And it was like a 24 session that they presented, and the initial drawings were like very sketchy, very disinformed, very fragmented, as you would expect with a schizophrenic patient.
Mm-hmm.
But then as they were talking and working on things and drawing, the latter pictures, 24, 25, 26 picture, towards the end of their therapy relationship, very defined, very secure, very oriented.
So they're rewiring their brain.
They were literally rewiring, John.
Eye-hand coordination.
It was amazing.
The very act of taking the brush.
To see them lay that out in the way that they did. They didn't do brushes. It was just drawing. But it was fascinating. Art therapists, I love you. And by the way, occupational therapy does a lot of that kind of stuff very well, too, as an honorable mention.
I like how you said that. I was just thinking of Van Gogh as an artist in Starry Night, for example, and how they get kind of bizarre looking colors and very bright colors, but one can't know what he had in terms of what we know it's some sort of a thought disorder or significant mood disorder.
And that's again a creator of
a creator, and it really helped him.
Neil's got the mic. Usually that means something good's coming.
Oh, it's just Van Gogh lived on cigarettes and like lead paint. Like he had a lot of problems. The interesting about Van Gogh was the fact that he wanted to be an impressionist. He could never figure out the style. So that sunflower painting that you see, I think he painted like dozens of them, and he just did that one over and over and over again. It's really crazy.
He did olive groves too a lot. So.
Yeah, so he was an interesting bird, and he did not live a really healthy life to go with all the creative mental stuff that he had. But yeah, he's an interesting.
He actually did a painting of himself as a skeleton smoking a cigarette.
Well, yeah, because he lived off cigarettes.
Yeah,
it was crazy.
I got nothing to add here.
Starry night.
Wow. Was there mushrooms involved anywhere? It's a little MDMA. Like, what are we doing here? Those are drugs, if you didn't know. The last one I want to touch that I think is a bigger one is motivational interviewing. I love motivational interviewing.
That's what we learn. That's what our new counselors learn in the first
real
counseling courses. Yeah.
Good deal. I love that because it really works with motivating the individual.
Well, it's good with substance abuse.
I was just going to say that. You stole my thunder. I go directly here when I'm dealing with substance abuse issues because it really looks at like being pre-contemplative and you're outside of a circle and then you move into a contemplative state where you're wondering, am I going to do anything? Is it something that I need to do? And then you get into a determination state and then you get into an action state and then you go into maintenance. And so there's different stages in the motivational schema that you think about. And I love it. I like to think where people are. And I love when I meet with somebody first session or two, and I find out like they're really already in an action state. Like that's awesome.
Yeah, I had one who only came, this is recent, who substance use and his alcohol, but now he traded to go to cannabis use.
Many times
many times, and he had absolutely no insight. And he was in denial, and it was the river in Africa, in Egypt. I mean, it was so much of that. But he was pre-contemplation, and he knew intellectually that this is where his wife was expecting him to go, but he didn't.
I love that.
I love, and no matter what I did in terms of motivational, he wasn't biting.
It just hit a wall.
It hit a wall.
Yeah.
Affable fellow.
Yeah.
Just affable.
Substance abuse is hard with it. I think that's why a lot of mental health therapists, by the way, John, just don't want to deal with it because the denial is so strong, and to break through that is just so difficult. I think it's why people don't like working with teenagers as well. I know I struggled at first with teenagers for sure. Many years ago, trying to begin working with teens, and I'm like, they don't want to listen. I don't want to sit. I don't want to participate. It's a different it's a different art to working with kids and especially teens. But okay, still many others. Did we mention schema therapy yet? See, I'm cheating as I have my list in our little game. Schema therapy. I don't think we mentioned
that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I didn't. I don't think I did either. Interpersonal therapy, solution focus. You mentioned narrative. We did drama, music, dance, movement therapies. I think we did pretty good with our list.
Yeah.
Neil, I want to go to you in summing us up a little bit. I love this conversation. I think this has been terribly fun, John.
Yeah, I've geeked out.
I know, right? It's so fun. What do you think people hear from this, though? Did we take some of the mystery out of this in going through some of these modalities, and what might people still be wondering? I'm really curious to tap into your mind that way.
Well, I would have to say that I think I brought up this topic that we should do this. Like
You did.
a week or two ago. I'm like, yes, he's using it already.
That's right. Thank you, Neil, for that. Yes.
And as a layman person, because I hear all the terms on the show, and so I was like, I'd love to know more about the different ones, why you use it. So I think hopefully when people come through this process, they understand the seriousness of what their therapists put in, the time they put into it, and the what they learn. Everyone's so different.
This is heavy stuff. It's not easy to learn.
Yeah, and that's the thing they have to understand. And so when you get these people when they come in, it's like, well, every therapist is the same. No, they're not.
They're really not.
There's so many different ways that they can work with you because of the experience, and because everyone's different, everything works differently for different people. And I think the important thing you guys brought up was a therapist picks a modality that fits them just as much as it fits their patients too. And I think that's important to understand. So you can go to one therapist and hate them and it doesn't make sense, you have no breakthrough. You go to another person and they might just because they switched modalities, it's huge for you. And so
you got to get a good fit. Yeah.
So I think that helps hopefully patient know that if it doesn't work initially, that there's hope that there could be something else to help them.
Different type of
I
therapy.
think that so I think this actually gives them some hope that it's not always
Good.
like I think this was good because it doesn't give you so many. It's just a wide breadth of resources that
really
they
is.
don't understand. It's
There's a lot
therapy.
out there.
Therapy's therapy, but most people don't understand that there's more to therapy than just sitting.
There's a
on the
lot
couch
of science
talking.
here. Yeah, I'll tell you, Neil. It drives me nuts because we're not paid like this. But I mean, there's a lot of training that goes into this. A lot of training.
Well, you had your initial one, and then you guys have continuing education.
Yeah, there's 4 years. Listen, there's 4 years of undergraduate study. Then you have 2 years of graduate level.
Well, it's
study.
gone up.
Then
It's gone up.
What do you mean?
It's 2.5 years, 3 years now.
Seriously?
Seriously. Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
To get an MSW is like two and a half, 3 year process.
For counseling.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Well, wow.
And
So 7 years, not 6. But then you go through supervision, which is an intense learning under like an apprenticeship, if you will. And then, as you say, there's continuing education that you're expected to continue.
And that's the other
to do.
thing is that when you get these folks and as an educator, they'll get folks that'll say, well, I can learn just as much online and I'm going to do it as fast as I can. And yes, you can technically do that faster. The problem is that
Incomplete.
Have you been able to integrate what you've learned in those years that you've studied? And I think that's part
that
of
comes with.
And so it's different. It's not a job. This is a profession.
Right.
It is. There's an art to it, and so like lawyers and doctors. There's a practice to it, or ministers.
Yeah, my friends like, oh my God, Chris, you just talk like a therapist. I'm like, I'm just hanging out. Matter of fact, you've done that to me, Neil. When we're down at times. I'm sorry. It gets ingrained. It's kind of what you do, and it becomes a part. I mean, particularly if you've been doing it for 25, 30 years, right, John? So, all right, you're getting thanked online, Neil, for bringing the topic up. It was a good show, it is said. So, listen, I was worried that we would be too geeked out and sciencey with it, but it seems like John, we did a
you
good
brought
job.
me to back.
We did a
couple of
good
times.
job, and congratulations for winning our little challenge game.
Well, yeah, I didn't even think of schema though. That's good.
Listen, I hope we've taken some of the mystery out of this. Therapy is helpful. Therapy is a really super special thing. We're passionate about mental health and substance abuse treatment. So lock in, man. Go get it done. Get well. So we're looking for you because there's a lot of different therapists with a lot of different modalities that can
A lot
move
of
around
good
and help you.
therapists out there.
There really are.
Yeah.
There really are. So happy 4th of July again.